Please note that this content is for educational purposes and for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. More details available in the description box. Hello everyone and welcome back to another live stream with me, Grizzly. This is Grizzly True Crime, and today's case, as the intro just said, comes with a massive trigger warning, particularly discussing themes of severe neglect and child abuse. And now the person who was neglected and abused for 20 years is 31 years old and managed to escape. So it is a horrifying story. It is, honestly, I have no words. All I want to say is that, wow, this male victim, they are not releasing his name or photos, he's recovering in the hospital, is an honorary Grizzly, such a hero, such the survival skills. Oh my goodness, the way that he survived for 20 years in these conditions is just, you will hear about it. We have got the probable cause affidavit and it is pretty lengthy. It's 15 pages long and it's got a lot of details that I haven't really seen reported too much in the media yet, so we're going to be reading through that together. But first, I want to watch the press conference from this morning with you, just so that we can watch that and we can get a general overview of the case together. We can see how it would have unfolded in the news, and then we're going to dive into the document, okay? So please like and share so others can also know we are live right now. Obviously not because you like the topic, it's because you want others to learn about this, is to get the live stream into the algorithm, or you like the way that I present true crime, right? And yeah, let's dive into this. So basically, if you didn't expand the description box, this happened in Waterbury, Connecticut. In some reports, they say he's 32 years old, some 31. You know, obviously one would have to look at his exact date of birth. So 32-year-old man was allegedly held captive by his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, for over 20 years. So I'm reading from my description box, right? Starting when he was approximately 11 years old, but he actually told the police that the abuse started when he was 3 years old. 3. So the charges that this stepmother is facing, they say dates all the way back to when he was 3. So she could face a total of 51 years in prison. She's 56 years old now. Or if they have the charges, if she's convicted, right? If they have the charges run concurrently, then she could face a maximum of 20 years in prison. I hope that's after hearing about all this, of course, she's innocent until proven guilty. I just like, man, if she's guilty, yeah, I really hope for the maximum. And you know what's sad is that prison is going to be better for her than what this guy grew up in the conditions that he grew up in. The police themselves said this was worse than prison. So buckle up, everyone. Scarlett Cook said, thank you for all you do, G. You're the best. Thank you so much. So let's quickly look at this press conference. So this happened this morning, and then we're going to look at that document, okay? So here we go. We've got the police chief speaking. So here he comes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. As you all know, on February 17th, around 8:40 p.m., Waterbury Police responded to 2 Blake Street on a report of a fire. Officers and fire investigators immediately realized there were some grave concerns about some of the conditions in the house. There were 2 occupants of the house, one being Kimberly Sullivan, the stepmother of the male victim. Officers and fire investigators quickly realized that there was a room in the house that appeared to have locks on it from the exit.
I'm just going to pause and just explain, because maybe if you don't know anything about this case, it might just go over your head for a second here. What happened was that this survivor, who had been in captivity for 20 years, managed to start a fire. And just wait till you, because I was thinking, how did he do that? Like, and they said like hand sanitizer and printer paper. I'm like, and wait till you hear in the document how he did it. Just wait till you hear how he managed to survive. It's really an incredible survival story, but it is so tragic. This is like, it's really bad. So what he did was start a little fire, and then he got that fire going, and he knew this would risk his life. He could die, but he couldn't take this anymore. He's like, this is absolutely worth the risk. This is the only way. And so we're going to expand on that thought later based on what we read in the document. But yeah, he knew the fire department had to come out, and I mean, they would just take one look at him and know, because he weighed 68 pounds, 31 kilograms as a 31-year-old or 32-year-old man. Okay, so that's what happened.
Exterior portion of the house, they began to speak to the male victim, who disclosed that he was being held captive in the house for an extended period of time, approximately 20 years. The investigation began from that point. We worked closely with the State's Attorney's Office, Maureen Platt, as well as Assistant State's Attorney Don Thurkelson, because frankly, what was being reported was unfathomable to us at that point in time. Through those investigative meetings and through search warrants, we were able to seize physical evidence and conduct interviews and dig up some more information that corroborated the victim's story. This investigation, as the mayor points out, continues, is very open and very active. We were able to obtain arrest warrants for Kimberly Sullivan. She was arrested yesterday. She was arraigned in Waterbury Superior Court. She's currently being held on a $300,000 bond. At this point,
I can see the questions are already flying. Where is his real family? So they do say in this press conference, I'll just give you some bullet points. His mother was not ever really in his life. I think they say from the age of 2. His father died last year, but still I'm like, okay, but 20 years in captivity, so the father knew about it for 19 years? According to the victim, yes. He says his father knew, his grandmother that's also deceased knew, and his 2 half-sisters knew. But it's a case where if you look at the household, so there's the lady that was arrested, the stepmother, and his biological father, and then obviously the biological father, I would assume, had kids with this lady, and so they were treated completely differently. The 2 sisters could have friends, they could go out, they were never in captivity, all of that according to what the victim has told police, which is detailed in the document, okay? But for me to think that, holy crap, the grandmother, the father, the 2 half-sisters knew, that's difficult, man. That's very difficult. But we're going to get into more of those details when we read through the whole PCA, and the police chief here will answer some questions in a moment.
Open the floor up for any questions.
The biological father, we've learned that he recently left the home, and her lawyer is saying that we need to look deeper into his part in all of this. When it comes to the investigation, is he being held accountable at all?
The biological father is deceased and died in January of 2024. Prior to his death, he was wheelchair bound from some medical conditions.
So wheelchair bound from some medical conditions is what they say, but died in January of 2022. I just want to make sure that I boost this a little bit more for you. Just hold on one second, because it's a little bit soft, especially with the questions, of course. So let's go like this. They actually ask, they allow a lot of questions. This is a 21-minute press conference.
Also, it was reported to the school system that this boy at the time, now 32-year-old man, he was starving, he was asking other kids for lunch. I mean, is this a failure on the school system that this matter was not taken more seriously?
So we're doing some background investigation. There are 2 incidents that we had within our computer system of dealing with that address and with the family back in 2005. One was a request from DCF to do a welfare check at the location because children that the victim was familiar with hadn't seen him and they were concerned about him. Officers went to the house was clean, it was lived in, they spoke to the victim at that point in time, and there were no cause for any alarm or any.
The stepmother had apparently told the victim that you will lie to them, you will tell them everything's fine, and he did. And so in 2005, they thought everything was okay. Oh my goodness. Barbara, Jean Bracelet said, I thought he said, yeah, January 2024, last year, is when the biological father passed away.
any conditions that existed that would have led officers to believe anything other than a normal childhood and a normal family existence was occurring. But that was reported back to DCF, and that was the last that we were involved in that particular investigation. We were called back to the house in the latter part of April by the family who wanted to file a harassment complaint against members of the school district, saying that they were continuously reporting them to DCF and felt that they were trying to get the family in trouble and have the family investigated. We have no further information about where that went, other than there was no proof provided by the family that there was any type of harassment that was occurring. You know, as far as the school district's concerned, we are looking at those records now. We're working with DCF to look at records that they may have from previous investigations, and that's part of the ongoing investigation.
But Chief, if people were filing complaints, even if it was with DCF, continuously, as the family, I guess, alleged, you know, was there more contact from DCF, and do you know anything about how that would have gone?
So the only contact we had was back in April of 2005 when we were notified to conduct that welfare check. And again, we're looking for those records now to determine where that investigation may have gone, but there was no further reported information to the Waterbury Police Department.
So when you had an officer go out there that first time, you're saying everything looked normal, it looked like a normal childhood, but the school district, the principal told us that the child looked really small, malnourished, was drinking from a urinal at school, was taking kids' food. So, I mean, with all that information, the officer still concluded that the child was safe at that time?
Well, the officer didn't have that information. So this former principal is now disclosing all this information, and I believe in the news clips I've reviewed that he was making calls to DCF and other agencies. Waterbury Police were never notified by this particular principal about those conditions. So this is all information that is coming out now as this case unfolds.
Keep that in your mind, pin that in your mind, because we're going to look at a clip after this about the principal that he's referring to, and people saying that they knew. It's like, we didn't have that information back then, right? But apparently the victim, from when he was young, already in school, he would be so hungry. He said he's been hungry his whole life. From when he was 3, he said he's been starved and abused. So he was so hungry that he would steal other kids' food, and he would eat food out of the garbage. And so the teachers were concerned, and they called, CPS to check it out. But then the stepmother, allegedly, according to the victim, said that you're going to act like everything's normal. And so he did, because he was worried about the consequences, and rightfully so, based on what happened over the years, right? So we're going to get to all that.
I believe he said he called police, but you have no record of that.
Well, I believe he's wrong if that's what he said, because there is no record of it.
Can you talk about, you said that there was some evidence that corroborates the story of the gentleman. Can you talk any more about what that is, or how do you go about corroborating a story like this that's so extraordinary?
Right. So there's some physical evidence that was seized from the house that does corroborate the fact that that room did have exterior locks on it, and a number of different styles of exterior locks, as was explained during an interview with the victim. Throughout the years, it appeared that the locks increased in security levels as time progressed, and obviously he became older and maybe a little bit stronger. So that's certainly one component, and then there's other components of the fire investigation that are part of the evidence package as well.
And I'm sorry if you said this, but were these the only 2 individuals living in that home?
Yes, there were 2 siblings. They were in and out of the home, but they have since moved out.
Thanks.
So say DCF had all this information the principal's saying, they don't share any of that with police?
You're going to have to talk to DCF about what their protocol is on when they share information with police. DCF does work closely with police departments and provides a lot of information to police departments in a number of different ways. I don't know what their protocol is on when they share that information, so that would be something that they would have to respond to.
Chief, how's the victim doing now? Obviously some serious conditions. We've read about the PT.
So that answers the question here. Susan in SoCal said, is it just me? Oh, no, not that one. He said it was the sheriff, but defensive. Maybe a little snarky. Maybe they just didn't have the information. Maybe they're wishing people came forward before. I don't know, right? And Virginia, this was the question I was referring to. You said, who's he staying with now? He's apparently still in the hospital being treated, because of his physical condition. Shame.
PTSD and depression. What can you share about how the victims fare?
Right, so obviously he's got a lot of mental health issues that he has to deal with at this point in time. There are a lot of physical conditions that he's working on as well. I mean, here's an adult that was 5'9" and 68 pounds. You know, there's some apparent orthopedic issues. You know, the room was very small. You know, honestly, you know, when I read about it and talk to the investigators and overlook the interviews, it was worse than the conditions of a jail cell. So
see, that's why I say, even if the stepmother goes to prison, if convicted, as the police chief said, it's how he grew up, how the survivor was confined, was captivated, right, held captive. It was worse than jail, worse than prison. So even if she gets 20 years, it could be between 20 and 51, depending on the charges, depending on obviously if she's convicted, and depending on if they run consecutive or concurrent. Still, the conditions are going to be better than how the survivor had to grow up. It's terrible. By the way, 5'9", 68 pounds, which is 30 kilograms. He weighed 30 kilograms, and 1 meter 75 would be his height if I converted. 175, 30 kilograms, or 5'9", 68 pounds, and 32 years old. Remember, this is not a child anymore. He survived this for 20 years, from age 11, and he says it actually started when he was 3. Wow, okay.
There's a lot of physical therapy that he'll have to go through. There's a lot of healing that he'll have to go through mentally, and you know, I can tell you this: our investigators, and I'll specifically point out Detective Steve Brownell and Detective John Pace, who were the lead investigators in this particular case. But all the investigators, the entire Criminal Investigations Bureau, has been very supportive of the victim. You know, they took a collection up and bought him some items to try to make life more comfortable, some clothing and some books and some things to kind of get him along the way as he goes through this process. But, you know, our plan is to continue to support him. He's going to need a lot of support as he travels through this and tries to figure out how to navigate what has occurred and what the future holds for him.
Chief, I think a lot of people are wondering, like, where are his other relatives? Did no one else see this man for 20 years, that they were able to, you know, say anything, report anything to police? Like, was his stepmother the only person in his life? Did he have, you said he had 2 siblings. Where is everyone else? Where are all the relatives?
So the backdrop is being formed, and this is again why the investigation continues. You know, it appears that it was a very controlling situation going on regarding the victim's condition, his whereabouts, his connection with other family members, other people in the community, other friends. Information was very guarded on what was released and you know, when he was able to see other members of the family and other members of the community. And I think that, you know, I know, you know, from information provided in the interviews that there was a level of fear on retaliation on what would occur if information was released or help was provided to the victim by family members.
He was apparently locked up in a small room for 22 to 24 hours a day. He was only let out of the room, according to what he told the police, just to do chores quickly. Just let out to do chores and then sent back into the room. He only got 2 cups of water a day and sometimes had to drink out of the toilet. He was given 2 sandwiches a day. We're going to get into all these details. Everything will make so much more sense once we read through the document. I just know documents are not for everyone because there's lots of new people here, but I would encourage you to stick around to, I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read everything to you. It just makes so much sense the way that the police wrote that whole narrative, and that there was an uncle, you know, asking questions, and how the stepmother responded to that. And we're going to look at so much, okay? So make sure, I'm just kind of warming us up so that we know what we're in for, because it's really a very horrific case.
Were there any injuries as a result of the fire?
Smoke inhalation, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if there's any long-term effects from what occurred at the fire, but on scene, he was treated for smoke inhalation.
How did he get out of the house? Did he get out of the house on his own, or did firefighters have to rescue him?
He was assisted out of the house.
Will you be identifying him at any point?
We've got like 10 minutes more of this press conference, okay? Then we're going to dive into the document because when they say he was assisted out of the house, wait till you hear why. He's very, very smart. What a survivor. He knew what he needed to do to get help, to get out of the situation at last.
You know, that's a great question. Not at this time, and I don't really know when, if at all.
Where's the mother?
The mother has not been involved in the victim's life.
From the beginning?
Pretty much. From all accounts, around 2 years old.
The suspect is denying all the allegations through her attorney. Has she said anything about how her stepson would be 68 pounds, for example?
Kimberly Sullivan refused to talk to us immediately.
Do you have a picture of the door?
Kimberly Sullivan is the stepmother. I almost said monster already. The stepmother who has been charged. We're going to go over those charges as well. And she immediately got a lawyer and would not talk to the police. So there won't be any police video interviews to watch of her. Okay. We can't get our hands on those with a FOIA request anytime soon because she just wouldn't talk.
The lock that was taken as evidence?
I'm 100% certain that we do. I'd have to confer with the state's attorney if we were going to release any information like that at this time.
Does Kimberly Sullivan, have any prior criminal convictions?
No prior criminal history with us here at the police department.
Neighbors were telling us that if you had knocked on the window, they would have helped him. Were there any other attempts besides as far as trying to get him some help?
No, again, I don't, you know, from what we've put together so far, no, and that's because of a fear of retaliation. I mean, he, in his room, to relieve himself, right, had this elaborate mechanism that he created where he would urinate in a bottle, and he had straws connected to the bottom of the bottle, and he found a hole in the storm window frame that he was able to put these straws through, and he did that because the storm window itself wouldn't open up, and he was fearful that if he broke that storm window or tried to open it up, that there would be some retaliation. So, you know, I'm certainly not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but there's a lot of nuances to people that are victims and held captive, and I think that, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this particular gentleman in that area to really determine all the impact and all the effects that this long-term condition has really brought on him.
I really hope that nobody here will victim blame. Sure, then you're going to see me get snarky. Please don't do that. I mean, I know that the media was just curious. Like, why doesn't he knock on a window? It's like, you know, sometimes questions can come across a little insensitive. Why didn't he try to get out sooner? Why doesn't he knock on a window? Coercive control, fear of retaliation, and that happened. He'd broken out once before. We're going to go over the document and read all of that. And he got out of the room that he was kept captive in and went straight to the kitchen just to get some food. And that is one time he remembers being physically assaulted. He said his stepmother slapped him through the face and sent him straight back to that room. And then it became that he couldn't get out of the room himself. That was like bolts and all sorts of locks and things. So you see, there was retaliation. If there would be less water, less food, more lockup, less time outside of the room, that's what he was fearful of. So that would be why. I think the questions to ask is, why the hell did someone do this to him? What, you know, there's other questions one could direct at the person who's charged with doing this, even though right now, of course, she's innocent or proven guilty, and her attorney is saying like, wow, she thinks that these allegations are outlandish, that they will be pushing back against every single one of them. Of course, that's his job. But she just like, I never ever did that. But like, look at the condition of the survivor though. 32 years old, 5'9", 68 pounds, 31 kilograms, you guys. Sure.
I take it you haven't had a case like this before?
33 years of law enforcement, this is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed, right? I mean, honestly, when we first started talking about it, we really couldn't believe it. It took a lot of convincing amongst ourselves to just really accept what was going on, and it's really hard to talk about still. I mean, it's shuddering to think that someone would treat any person, let alone a family member or someone that was entrusted as a guardian or a parental figure in this way.
Mayor, just can you also share your personal thoughts and reaction, just knowing something so disturbing happened in this community?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's just unfathomable that anyone could treat someone this way, as the chief said, especially within the relationship that they had. It's devastating, and you know, we're going to make sure that the systems are working into the future to see what might have happened 20 years ago when this may have been reported. But at this point, it appears that this was just really an isolated sense, and that they were locked in there all by themselves, and through fear and intimidation, she was able to keep it secret all that time.
So when you're talking about the future and other children, other families out there, I mean, if there's welfare checks, you know, and the kids are told to lie about being fed, I mean, what happens? Like, are they going to stay in these situations like he did, or? Well,
there's limits, I would think, to what you can do. We can send people out to check and look at it. I don't know what it looked like when the officer walked into the house in 2005, what the child looked like. You know, that's 2 decades ago, and so, you know, it's hard. We can send people out, we could do the checks, we could make sure that teachers, you know, and administrators are looking out for children, notice some of the telltale signs. I think we've come a long way as well in 20 years over looking for these things and being able to report them. Requirements of what has to go to DCF have changed over that time. So I think we can continue to do it, but can I tell you that it will never happen again? I don't think anyone can tell you that, because there's a lot of things that go into this that, you know, can help keep it secret.
Where was she arrested in Southington?
I don't know. I could get you that information. I'm not sure exactly where she was arrested in Southington. You know, and it's important, you know, to piggyback on the mayor's response to your inquiry. You know, if you see something, say something. I know it's a cliche, and we talk about it all the time, but of all the great work that the media and press is doing now on this particular case, and talking to relatives and neighbors and some school district people. I know some have said that they've made calls, but some have said they haven't, right? So if things are peculiar, it's important to notify the police department. We will certainly look into that information and take the appropriate action. And it may take more than one time, depending on the circumstances we find when we get there.
You can always report things anonymously. If you see something, say something. I'm glad he said that, because it's true. Some of the neighbors say, oh, we saw this like looked like a little boy in the window sometimes, but yet never saw him come outside the house, never saw him really part of the family, you know? So kind of like going, huh, that's weird, or something's a little off there, but then just brush it off and continue on with your day. And understand the mentality of like, I'm not going to get involved with someone's business, but I don't know, as Grizzlies worldwide, I don't think that's what we do, right? If you see something, say something. I hope more people will learn that, because it can't do harm. Especially if you make an anonymous report just for like a welfare check. Just say, I'm seeing like this emaciated looking person in a window, and I've never seen this person like come outside the house. I don't know who that even is, right? Just so they can check it out. You never know. I mean, as the police chief said here, it could take multiple times as well, or multiple people reporting, but it could save a life.
And we know that, you know, through history and through our work with servicing agencies, the victims of domestic violence especially are oftentimes reluctant to come forward. And, you know, we encourage people that are victims of domestic violence to find the fortitude to come forward, and we're here to help. We really are.
In this situation, though, it seems like, according to the police report, that his life became worse because someone reported it. And after that second DCF visit, the mother pulled him from school.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct. Correct.
But you still would encourage people to
I would. I mean, because you're not going to break the cycle any other way. I mean, unfortunately, in this case, it seems as if an 11-year-old was taken extreme advantage of, and at that time, it's very tragic that occurred. But it will never stop, right? And this gentleman suffered for 2 decades because of that. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but I think it's really important to never lose hope and to continue to report incidents, especially if you're a victim of neglect or a crime.
We only have about 3 minutes left of this press conference, and then we are going to right after that, deep dive the document, and then I'm going to show you the clips of I think it is the principal and then some of the neighbors as well. We'll look at that after the document, because I could see you guys have the same questions I had when I first discovered the case of like, where's the mom? Where's the dad? Who else was in the house? How did he get free? How exactly did he do that? How did he survive for this long? When did it start? Why did it start? All the things, okay? We're going to go through all of that. The document answers many questions. Not all, but many.
Was he in the room all the time? Because there were some reports that he was in the backyard doing chores.
He would be released from the room anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple of hours every day. There were some indication during the interview that although his dad didn't do him too many favors when the stepmother wasn't around, he would stay out of the room a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Any motive, like any indication as to why she would do something like this?
As I said, she refused to speak to us immediately, and I hope the investigation reveals more information on the reasoning and the motive on why.
Did he say anything in the interview?
No, not to really point to that, other than to describe the agony that he went through and the lack of understanding on why.
Will the sisters face charges at any point?
No, in speaking to the state's attorney's office, we don't believe so at this time. I mean, this is a very open case, very active case. It appears that so far the evidence collected and the information received reveals that Kimberly Sullivan is the sole person responsible, and we're able to charge at this point in time.
Have the daughters spoken? Have the sisters spoken at all? I don't recall them in the warrant.
I'm sorry?
I don't recall seeing the sisters, half-sisters' names or being interviewed in the warrant. Were there attempts made to reach out to them?
Well, again, we're attempting to talk to everybody in this case, yeah.
So they said no, we're not going to comment?
At this point in time, there's been no statements taken from them. Anything else?
Can you just talk about the next steps in the court proceedings?
Yeah, so, obviously, she's held on a $300,000 bond. There is a possibility that she may bond out. She'd have to do that at court. And Mark, are we aware of her next court date? Do you have that date? 26th. 26th of March? March 26th, she will appear again. Okay? As always, we appreciate the support and you all coming out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
March 26th is when she'll be in court again. Now, if you didn't see what she looks like, let me quickly fetch you a little picture. Just hold on one second. There's stepmother, the one that has been charged, okay? She has been charged with assault in the 1st degree, kidnapping in the 2nd degree, unlawful restraint in the 1st degree, cruelty to persons, and reckless endangerment in the 1st degree. So she faces up to 20 years max per charge. Some of them are up to 5 years. So if they run consecutively, she could spend, I think it was up to 51 years in prison max. I think the minimum could be like 8. And if they run concurrently, the max could be 20 years. So we shall see what happens next. But right now, okay, even though I want to show you so many things. I do want to go to the document, but before we do, let me just quickly show you the condition of the house just from this one article here. This happened in Waterbury, Connecticut. For those asking as well, I just want to show you this picture here where they talk about Kimberly Sullivan, 56, was arrested Wednesday and charged in the unthinkable crime about a month after the shocking living arrangement was uncovered when a blaze erupted at the family's Waterbury house, according to police. We're going to read through the document now. Sullivan fled the home and her 32-year-old stepson was later pulled out by firefighters on February 17th when he weighed just 68 pounds, according to court documents. We're going to read those court documents. Thank you to Grizzly Cat for finding that court document for me today. And she was so quick with it. It's like, this one, we need to find this document, and within 5 minutes she had it. So here you can see just some images from the house. I've also posted those to Patreon if you're interested to check it out. It's on the free public tier if you just want to check it out there. Here as well is a picture of the home, picture of the stepmother. Okay. And here is also the house now. It wasn't boarded up like this before. I think this is now after the fire and just from the investigation. Here she is again. Sullivan's lawyer said that when he read the list of accusations to his client, she was blown away. She was stunned by what was being said. Like, how dare anyone blame her for this? None of that happened, she says. He had free reign in the house, he being the survivor. The 32-year-old man who weighs only 68 pounds. She's like, no, he had free reign. Didn't do any of that. Like, right, here's the house as well. So I just wanted to show you that. As I say, Waterbury, Connecticut is where this happened. So now what we're going to do, before we look at any more clips, because I want to make sure that you've got the full context of what the heck went on here and that all your questions can hopefully, well, many of them will be answered through this document. All right, so hold on one second. Okay, so it's a 15-page document. We're starting on page 5 because, before that is just like this. There's nothing too much to read here besides the charges, of course, assault in the first degree, kidnapping in the second degree, unlawful restraint first degree, and all of that. Right, so I'm going to start with the police narrative here on page 5. This would be that the Affidavit Detective Stephen Brownell is a regular member of the Waterbury Police Department, having over 20 years of police training and experience. The Affidavit is currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Bureau and has conducted investigations resulting in both the arrest and conviction of those persons involved. I'm going to post this document on Patreon on that same free tier public post from today, right after this live stream, if you want to go read it for yourself as well. All right. So they said the following facts and circumstances are stated from personal knowledge and observations, as well as information received from other police officers acting in their official capacity and from official police reports and statements by prudent and credible witnesses. Let me give a quick YouTube disclaimer for the YouTube bots, AI bots. Hello. This is public record. Okay, it's directly from the court system. It's the police narrative of what happened in this case. Let me also give a quick trigger warning. This is potentially upsetting, triggering, or distressing content, especially involving neglect, which is a terrible form of abuse. But there's neglect, there's starvation, there's all this abuse for many years, right? So just be mindful of that. If it ever gets too much for you, please know you can always step away, look after your mental health. We will always save a seat for you. This Country Girl's Life, thank you for being a member for 35 months. You said, I hope this man gets all the help and support he needs. I hope so too. So, that in the following affidavit, there's a victim of domestic violence whose identity will be omitted. The victim shall be referred to as male victim 1, MV1. Along with his identity, his address, and the location where he's being treated shall be omitted as well. That on the 17th of February of 2025, at approximately 20:42 hours, so almost 8:45 in the evening, the Waterbury Police Department received a complaint for an active fire, address omitted, in Waterbury, Connecticut, filed by the stepmother Kimberly Sullivan. WPD case number 25-17163. Officers Martina and Inzitari were dispatched to the scene, as well as the Waterbury Fire Department. Upon arrival, the WFD was already on scene and began working on the active structure fire. That officer in Zatari observed that the WFD made entry into the residence and removed a party, later identified as male victim 1, who was immediately brought to the AMR ambulance for medical treatment. Officer Inzatori reported that MV1's stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was standing outside and was uninjured. The WFD worked the fire and were able to extinguish the fire, which appeared to be mostly contained to the second floor. Multiple rooms on the second floor had heavy fire, smoke, and water damage from the incident. Other areas of the house sustained smoke and water damage from the incident. Okay, so that Officer Inzatori checked on MV1. So as you know, MV1 stands for Male Victim 1. Let me just quickly do this. In the ambulance where he was being treated for smoke inhalation. Upon viewing MV1, Officer Inzatori observed that Male Victim 1 was extremely emaciated. His hair was matted and unkempt. He was very dirty and his teeth all appeared to be rotten. MV1 was conscious and alert, although he was having difficulty speaking due to smoke inhalation. MV1 reported to Officer Inzatori that he intentionally started the fire in his room on the second floor using a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper because he wanted his freedom. He stated that he had been locked in that house his entire life. MV1 stated that he has been held captive at the residence since he was approximately 11 years old. MV1 specifically mentioned that his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, keeps him locked inside his bedroom as there's a lock on the outside of his bedroom door. MV1 was transported to St. Mary's Hospital for treatment before being transferred to facility name omitted as his condition worsened, and he was listed as being in critical condition due to smoke inhalation. Now, if you guys are wondering already, because when I read this for the first 2 times, a lighter, where do you get a lighter? You will find out that when his father passed away, the stepmother gave him some of his father's clothing, and in one of the pockets was a lighter, which he then held onto. And he used that on the day that he started this fire. He used that lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper. And he knew he had to get this fire going. It had to be bad enough that the fire department would come out. I mean, if it wasn't, can you imagine the punishment? Lottie says, when cases are this tough, I ignore all other media, then wait for G to gently guide me through it. Kindness and accuracy, simply lovely. Thank you so much, Lottie. That is so sweet. Okay, so I've got the trigger warning on the screen, so please know it really gets very sad. Okay, so then he wanted his freedom. He stated he'd been locked in that house his entire life. He's been held captive at the residence since he was approximately 11 years old, as I just read, okay? So, that Detective Pesce was contacted to respond to the fire scene as he's a police fire investigator for the city. Upon arrival, Detective Pesce was updated by on-scene officers of MV1's condition related to the fire and his general appearance. Detective Pesce then introduced himself and spoke briefly with Kimberly Sullivan, the stepmother, who was on scene in a vehicle with a daughter and the daughter's boyfriend. Remember, Kimberly, the stepmother, had 2 daughters of her own. Sullivan reported to Detective Pesce that she didn't know what happened and that she woke up to the smoke and she went to MV1's room. Sullivan stated she went to MV1's room and saw a large amount of fire in his doorway. Sullivan stated that MV1, Male Victim 1, was saying something about a TV and that she was screaming at him to get out of the room. In fact, he said something about a radio, not a TV. He didn't have a TV in his room. Anyway, so Sullivan stated that she guessed that he ran through the fire because he did end up outside of the room. Detective Pesce asked if Male Victim 1 was diagnosed with any mental conditions, and Kimberly, the stepmother, stated that he has a lot of problems, but he isn't diagnosed with any conditions, as Male Victim 1's father was against using doctors. Already there, I can just feel the victim blaming starting. She's like, yeah, this guy's got a lot of problems. Come on, man. He was a child. He says it started when he was 3. The survivor, he had to survive this since he was 3. Right? But at this address, he was kept in captivity, according to what he told police, from when he was 11. He's 31 now. 20 years in captivity. And so it's like, I'm just saying, like in that context, you're like, wow, the stepmother's going to stand there and say, what? He has a lot of problems, but he isn't diagnosed with any conditions, as Male Victim 1's father was against using doctors. Sullivan stated that She has brought MV1 to a psychiatrist a few times. I think based on what the victim said, that's a straight up lie. Okay, but as MV1 has mentioned hurting himself in the past, Detective Pesce asked Sullivan, when they say Sullivan, they mean the stepmother, right? Kimberly Sullivan, if male victim 1 was locked inside his room, and she stated that his door is not locked and that he has free reign of the house. Another lie, okay, based on what the victim said and based on the evidence that the police found. Welcome to membership, Lottie. So they said that while the WFD was still actively on scene dealing with a fire scene, WFD Inspector Sevilla and Detective Pesce did a cursory walk through the address of Waterbury to ascertain the origin and cause of the fire. WFD Inspector Sevilla located a burn pattern on the floor of a second-floor bedroom, consistent with the fire being set to that location as there were various burnt-up papers and burnt debris. This location is consistent with the room that was described to be male victim 1's room on the second floor. That while fighting the fire, members of the WFD had moved items around the second floor bedroom, WFD uses the term overhaul, and removed the door to the room. Pesce observed that there is a slide lock on the outside of the door frame, which could be used to secure a door closed from outside of the room. Furthermore, the removed door from the room has a latch that appears to match up with the location of the slide lock. That during the early part of his investigation, Detective Pesce reached out to Kimberly Sullivan in an effort to further interview her in relation to the fire and male victim 1. Kimberly refused to meet with Detective Pesce and stated that she's spoken with an attorney and she will not be speaking to the police, which I know someone's going to say, that's her right. I know it's her right. It's just like, you know, that's what she should do. We know that. But like, yeah, I do wish she had spoken a bit. Do tell what you want to say, lady. But it'll probably be all excuses. Even though, just remember, she's innocent till proven guilty. That once male victim 1 had recovered to a point where he could speak with investigators, 2 interviews were conducted by detectives. The first was on the 21st of February of 2025 by Detective J. Pesce, and the second was conducted by Detective S. Brownell on the 6th of March of 2025. So that wasn't too long ago. Both interviews were conducted at the medical facility that male victim 1 is recovering. Each interview was audio and video recorded utilizing Waterbury Police Department body-worn camera. In the 3 hours that male victim 1 was interviewed, he provided details of the evolution of his life over the past 20 years that amounted to a life of captivity, abuse, and starvation. That MV1 was asked what his earliest memories were of being locked in his bedroom and stated that his earliest memories started around the age of 3. The family was living on a different address at the time, and he recalled being hungry, which led him to sneak out of his room at night to get food and fluids to drink. He stated that when the wrappings to the food he ate were eventually discovered, he began to be locked in his room. He stated that at the time, it was only during the evening hours. He recalled drinking water from the toilet at the time due to the fact that he was only getting about 2 cups of water per day. Male victim 1 then recalled how the family had moved to address omitted before preschool. So there was a different address where he says the abuse already started. V. Aguilar said all the captors holding children in houses are coming out of the woodwork. Yeah, I guess we're more aware of these cases as well. Yeah, we've spoken about a few of them recently. Indeed. Thank you, V. Aguilar, for being a member for 7 months. So male victim 1 stated that when he was in the 4th grade, he was permanently pulled out of school due to the fact that the school that he was attending contacted the Department of Children and Families, DCF, based on what he was doing at school. Male victim 1 stated that by this time in his life, he was always hungry. So when he was at school, he would ask others for their food, steal others' food, and sometimes eat food out of the garbage. This resulted in DCF responding to the home on 2 occasions. When they were there, he was told by Sullivan, his stepmother, to tell them that everything was fine. After the second DCF visit, he was pulled from school by Sullivan. Male victim 1 stated that he was provided worksheets for a short period of time, but the skill level never advanced and no one was teaching him anything. Male victim 1 stated that he always had a lock on the outside of his door. It evolved from a chain lock to a padlock and eventually a slide bolt lock. Not only did he demonstrate to Detective Pesce how it operated, but the lock was also observed from photos obtained from search and seizure warrants executed at the residence. Male victim 1 added that when he first moved to the address omitted, he was in an actual bedroom, locked in, but was then moved to a smaller room. The area was observed during the execution of the search warrant and can be described as a back storage space on the second floor of the residence. Male victim 1 stated he was only there for a short period of time, eventually being moved to a smaller room. This is where he's been since the age of 12. 20 years ago. 20 years. This space that male victim 1 was locked in was a back storage space that measured approximately 8 feet by 9 feet. So that's about 6.6 square meters if I convert it. Can you believe that? Arizona Gal said, I love the premise of your channel and appreciate the time you take to cover these lesser known cases. Grizzly K. See something, say something. Yes, it truly takes a village. Grateful for all of you. Thank you so much. So, yes, that is the lesson, you know. Never feel like, oh, someone else will say it, because they might not. You might be that justice warrior. You might be that person that saves someone's life. You know, we can't assume someone else will do it. They probably won't. This case is an example of that, right? 20 years. My goodness. So they talk about, we just said about the storage space that measured approximately 8 feet by 9 feet. The space also had angled ceilings, making the space that much smaller. Speaking with doctor's name omitted to protect location of male victim 1, she stated that male victim 1 stated during conversation that the space had no heat in winter and no air conditioning in the summer. We're on page 8 out of 15. Male victim 1 stated that once he was pulled from school, his weekday routine and captivity became brutally consistent for the rest of his life. Male victim 1 stated that he would typically go to sleep around 7:30 p.m. depending on what season it was. He stated that he would wake up around 3 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. and would be awake for the rest of the whole day and night, noting that he did not sleep well. He was let out of his room for a limited time in the morning around 8 a.m. He stated that he was tasked to complete several chores in the house, which may take him between 15 minutes and 2 hours, depending on what he had to do. From there, typically late in the morning, he was brought back to his room, where he was locked there for the remainder of the day and through the overnight hours until it was time to get out and do chores again the following day. When asked how often this routine was, he stated nearly every day. Male victim 1 stated that on occasion, he was let out in the early evening hours, briefly. MV1 stated that there were times when he would be locked in his room for a whole day at a time, equating to 24 straight hours. Male victim 1 added that on the weekends he would be let out of his room for longer periods of time by his father. He stated that while Sullivan took his sisters to events and to see friends, his father would allow him to come out and watch television with him. Male victim 1 stated that there were also times when his father would let him go outside with him to work in the yard. He added that the last time he left the property of address omitted was when he was approximately 14 or 15 years old. He's 32 now. Just think about that. Janet, welcome, and Sasha, thank you so much. Okay, I hope you guys are all okay. This is a very heavy case, very upsetting. Trigger warning is on the screen for a reason, okay? It's absolutely heartbreaking. But what a survivor. Like, this is incredible. An incredible survival story, but so sad. So, welcome, Crazy Mom RN. All right, so here we're going to continue now. It doesn't get any easier. So wait, we were here, worked in the yard. Male victim 1 added that the last time he left the property was when he was approximately 14 or 15 years old, stating that he went with his father to dump yard waste, and when discussing his father dying, he stated that his captivity and restraint got even worse. They told us at the press conference his father passed away in January of 2024. Male victim 1 stated that it got to a point where the only time that he'd ever be let out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property, stating there was only about 1 minute a day. Essentially, male victim 1 was locked in his room between 22 and 24 hours a day. Male victim 1 stated that he was provided up to 2 sandwiches a day. They were typically deli meats, peanut butter, and occasionally tuna or egg salad. Male victim 1 describes his food becoming less and less over time. When asked if he was hungry every day, he stated, "All day, every day, my entire life." Along with a limited food supply, he stated he had the equivalent of about 2 small bottles of water per day. Male victim 1 pointed to water bottles that were on the table during the interview. When detectives asked male victim 1 why he never spoke with anyone about his experience, he stated that he wanted to, but there was that constant threat of longer lockdowns and further diminishment of food. Male victim 1 describes a life of being mentally conditioned by Sullivan, the stepmother. He stated that the threat was that he would not see the light of day if he told anyone. Knowing that he had little time out of his room to that point, it was not something that he could risk. Shame, I mean, he explains it so well as well, you know. You'll learn now how he also educated himself. Oh my word. So it makes sense, right? That it would be that fear and her saying you won't see the light of day if you tell anyone. That constant fear hanging over him and worried about the repercussions if he even tried to tell anyone or tried to escape. So then he said, he stated that the threat was that he would not see the light of day if he told anyone, knowing that he had little time out of his room. To that point, it was not something he could risk. Male victim 1 also stated that he once discovered a gun while cleaning. This added to his fears of being hurt. It was unclear when in male victim 1's life he discovered the gun. He discussed how much of a normal day consisted of him counting cars as he looked out the window. Male victim 1 stated that he thought of breaking the window, later learning that there was a storm window that could not be removed, but male victim 1 stated that under pain of death, no one was to see me. This is what Sullivan, the stepmother, would say to male victim 1. Male victim 1 stated that throughout the years, Sullivan would constantly lead him to believe that she was going to start to unlock his door to let him out more, but that she needed to see if she could trust him. Male victim 1 stated that the room being unlocked never happened. Shame. She held that over him like, well, maybe, just maybe, I could unlock the door a little more, but I'm going to have to trust you first. She just held that over him, and that never happened. According to what the victim is saying, right? Male victim 1 described the evolution of his bathroom use. When he was a young child and he was only being locked in the room during the overnight hours, a training potty chair was left in his room to use. Once he reached his teenage years and then into his adult years, he was forced to use bottles and newspaper to dispose of his waste. Male victim 1 described how after he urinated into a bottle, he would have to then funnel it into a tube that he created with a series of straws and then guide those straws through a hole in the window to empty it. Male victim 1 continued by describing how he defecated. He stated that he placed newspaper on the ground and squatted over it to relieve himself. He would then roll the paper up, tie it with string that he unraveled from old t-shirts, and eventually bring it to the kitchen garbage when he was let out to do chores. Wow. So knowing that when male victim 1 was tended to in the ambulance after the fire, the officer and EMT recognized that not only was he emaciated, but there was clearly an issue with his hygiene. Male victim 1 remembered telling the officer that he had not bathed in a year or two. When asked about his bathing habits, male victim 1 stated that when he was still in school, he would get bathed every other night. But once pulled from the school, male victim 1 stated that bathing would become less and less and less, which ultimately led to him having to attempt to clean himself in his room. Male victim 1 explained that along with the bottle of water he had filled each day for his fluids, he kept one other bottle in his room. He stated that each day he would save a portion of his drinking water into this other bottle. Once that bottle was full, he stated that he would do what he could with that amount of water to bath himself. Oh, shame, man. So even though he had so little to drink, he was then also forced to save some of his drinking water. He only got 2 cups a day or 2 small water bottles a day. And he would then have to save some of that every day so that he could eventually store up enough for a full bottle to then attempt to rinse himself. Sure, that is so sad. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me just quickly do this. Oh my goodness. So then he said, he stated each day he would save a portion. We went that. Okay, so adding that he was not provided any kind of soap, he only had some men's cologne in his room. And when it came to haircuts, he stated that Sullivan would cut his hair. Body-worn camera footage shows male victim 1 with long, thick, matted hair. He stated that up to that point, he had not had a haircut in 3 years. Besides the occasional television viewing with his father on the weekends, MV1 stated that there was no other television viewing. He did not have one in his room. MV1 recalled the time when he briefly, 3 months, 15 years ago, had a small black and white television, but it became unusable due to the advancement in technology. MV1 stated that his only real connection to the outside world was a radio that was kept outside of his bedroom. He described listening to local radio stations such as WZBG, WATR, and WNPR. Among these 3 stations, male victim 1 was able to stay semi-current with world issues. He was able to learn about and follow NASCAR and Yukon basketball. Along with a calendar, MV1 stated that he utilized the radio to keep track of time. That's what I'm saying, like his survival skills are incredible. I don't think many people would survive the situation. And what he did, listening to the radio and making a calendar and keeping track of time, it's just unbelievable, right? Oh my goodness, surviving like that for 20 years as well. So between those 2 resources, he was able to keep track of time and the years, because then they started wondering, well, how do you know? Like 15 years ago and for 3 months and exactly this, they're like, oh, I kept track of time. Speaking with male victim 1 and knowing that his formal education concluded in the 4th grade, he was able to understand everything we spoke about. Each year, he stated that he was provided approximately 3 to 4 books. MV1 stated that he also had a dictionary. He stated that he would read the books, and each word that he came across that he did not know, he'd look up in the dictionary. It was determined that MV1 had ultimately educated himself. MV1 discussed how he was never allowed to have friends, noting that the only time that he was ever allowed to have fun was Halloween. He remembered the last time that he was allowed to go trick-or-treating on Halloween was when he was 12. Don't forget that when he escaped, he's now 32 years old. So he last remembers there was this time I could go out trick-or-treating when he was 12. Okay, so recalling his last costume being a firefighter. That's what I was talking about earlier. I was referencing, we're going to get to that, because I think that was so psychologically important as well. And it played into how he thought, well, I'm going to have to get firefighters out here. You know, that was his plan. So he had that lighter, he had some paper, he had some hand sanitizer. He's like, I need to get firefighters out here. So he recalled, his last costume being a firefighter aged 12 for Halloween. He stated that his sisters were allowed to have friends, but the friends were not allowed over the house, stating that he was their secret, stating, I have been kept a secret my entire life. Regarding other potential visitors to the house, MV1 stated that there was hardly anyone who came to the house, and if someone did come, he was told not to make a sound. Again, the threat of food diminishment and longer lockdowns was always being the threat if he did not comply. We're on page 11 of 15, by the way. MV1 added that along with Sullivan and his father knowing of the situation, his 2 half-sisters and deceased grandmother knew as well. None of which participated in locking him in the room. They were just aware. Okay, we don't know the situation in the house, so I'm going to try very hard not to judge. Obviously, I don't know if the other kids were fearful as well. I think they're all grown up now, but you know, who knows what is going on there. When asked about sexual abuse or physical abuse, MV1 stated that there was no sexual abuse, and he recalled only one instance when he was abused physically. He stated that around 2005, being home alone, he cut out a piece of wood paneling out of the door that he was locked behind. He stated he was able to sneak out and make his way to the rest of the house, where he found food and ate it. When Sullivan discovered he had made his way out of the room, she went up to him and slapped him in the face. From that point on, not only was his door locked, but plywood was secured on both sides of the door, so he could not get through the door again. This door was observed in the residence when the search warrants were executed, and there was, in fact, plywood on each side of the door. During one of the interviews, MV1 was shown 2 photos of the residence, and he confirmed which room was his and confirmed that was the door that secured him in his room. When asked about medical care, MV1 stated that he had not been to a doctor since he was a child. He stated that the only medicine he was ever provided was aspirin. He added that he had never been to a dentist. Along with seeing MV1's body being absolutely emaciated, it was clear that MV1 had severe tooth decay and no dental treatment to his mouth. MV1 stated that when he ate, pieces of his teeth would break off. MV1 was asked about the day that he set the fire. He described it as being a normal day, doing chores in the morning. But this day he was allowed out to clean off Sullivan's vehicle. Like every other day, he was given his 2 sandwiches and a snack and sent back to his room where he was locked until 7 p.m. that night. He stated that he was let out to try and replace a bulb on a small Christmas tree that was on a breakfast bar. When he could not complete the task, he was sent back to the room and locked in. Around 8 p.m., MV1 hears Sullivan's bedroom door close and he thought, same old, same old. He added that he doesn't remember what time, but he did remember making the choice to set the fire, noting that there wasn't a plan to do so earlier in the day. He stated that he also knew that when he set the fire, he would have to let it get to a point where Sullivan would not be able to put it out and that the fire department would have to come. MV1 stated that he set the fire using hand sanitizer, printer paper, and a flame from a lighter. He stated that he got the lighter about a year earlier after his father had died. He was allowed some of his deceased father's clothing, and there happened to be a lighter in an old jacket pocket. Wow. Yeah, Gloria says he is one resilient human being. Like, absolutely, right? So there was this lighter in this old jacket pocket. When asked how he knew the hand sanitizer was flammable, he stated, I read. He stated that he started the fire on the floor by his door and a stack of games. MV1 added that once the fire got going good, he started to stomp and yell for help. MV1 stated that Sullivan yelled to him asking what he wanted, and he told her, fire. When she opened the door, she asked what he did, and he told her that the radio had malfunctioned. He states that at this point, he was out of it and had collapsed at the top of the stairs. He stated that Sullivan made him get up and go to the downstairs bathroom and wash his face, stating that she did not want the fire department to know about his appearance. Those were her priorities, according to the victim. When there's a fire that just broke out, she's like, go downstairs and wash your face. No one's going to see you like that. Like, wow, okay. MV1 remembers that when the fire department arrived, his sister and boyfriend had arrived as well. He stated that he knew this because he could hear Sullivan yelling to them to get a screwdriver to get the locks off the door. Again, those priorities. Wash your face and let's get the locks off those doors. Wow. Male victim 1 concluded by stating that he fell to the ground again, with Sullivan yelling at him to get up. Now here we go. This is what I referenced earlier as well. He stated that he stayed on the ground and he purposefully didn't get up, so the fire department would be forced to get him. Male victim 1 believed that this was the only way out of his situation. On the 28th of Feb of 2025, a search and seizure warrant pertaining to all medical records for MV1 at medical facility omitted was applied for and granted. That same day, Detective Brownell, Detective K. Shear, and Lieutenant M. Torres responded to the medical facility to execute said warrant. All requested records were provided. The following is a chronological record of the staff's medical notes as they cared for male victim 1 from his admittance on the 18th of Feb of 2025 through the execution of the search warrant on the 28th of Feb of 2025. Records show that MV1 was admitted on the 18th of Feb of 2025 at 02:51 hours, so early morning hours, right? Due to the threat of respiratory failure, MV1 was intubated. It was documented that the medical facility showed no medical records on file. This means that any medical facility that shared the same system as this one showed no history of MV1. An early exam of MV1 described him as, oh man, I just want to say that word right. Wait, just hold on. Cacactic. That was a new word I learned today. Cacactic, and it appears younger than his stated age. Cacactic or cachexia is also referred to as wasting syndrome. It has to do with significant unplanned weight loss and the deterioration of muscle mass. This condition is seen in individuals who are suffering from chronic diseases such as heart disease and/or advanced cancer. MV1 was described as being near starvation. Continuing with early reports and observations from medical staff, it is documented that on the 18th of Feb of 2025 that MV1 is severely malnourished with a body mass index of 11. Speaking with medical staff for MV1, this is about half of what it should be. It was also explained that anything under 16 is considered starvation and anything under 13 is life-threatening. It's also noted in this report that refeeding syndrome needs to be avoided. medical staff at the facility stated that refeeding syndrome is a life-threatening condition brought upon by severe malnutrition, whereby introduction of foods and fluids can have fatal consequences due to the fact that the body cannot process the intake properly. That's why he's going to be having medical care for an extended amount of time, let alone afterwards. Can you imagine the therapy required, the trauma healing, just everything. But right now, the physical healing is tremendous. So they said here that MV1's body is not equipped to handle or break down the nutrients. This can have a domino effect of electrolyte imbalance, which will lead to heart abnormality, which will lead to heart failure. Records show that once extubated, MV1 begins to speak with staff and is immediately providing them with information about his situation, stating that he's been abused at home and not allowed to leave for several years. Staff noted their concern of a hostage situation. As the medical reports continue, it notes that male victim 1 is extremely thin and weighs 31.2 kilograms, approximately 68.7 pounds. MV1 is 5'9". MV1 continued to speak with staff about his situation, which was consistent with what he had initially stated to officers. MV1 stated that he set the fire because he states, "I wanted my freedom." He stated that he had been locked in his room since he was 11 years old. Staff notes that at this point, MV1 is fully oriented, his thoughts are clear, and he is absent of, I'm saying this for YouTube, you can read what the words are here, but they're very sensitive to that, so dark thoughts is what I'm going to say. As staff continues to speak with MV1, he talks with a constricted affect about what he missed out over the past 20 years. Shame. It's documented that over the past months, his mood was angry, he was always hungry, and that he's been tossing and turning in his sleep for the past few years. Here, MV1 opens up about his life, stating that he was pulled from school in the 4th grade because his parents were tired of DCF being called on the family because he was always hungry. MV1 explained that he was always asking other students for food, taking other students' food, and eating out of the garbage. When asked, he stated that he doesn't know basic technology and described spending his days reading and watching cars pass by his window. Note that at the end of Detective Pesquet's interview, Detective Pesquet attempted to help male victim 1 work an iPad, and it was clear that he had no concept of how it worked. Evaluations of MV1 noted that he had decreased ability to use his arms for pushing and pulling, decreased ability to use his legs for bridging and pushing, and an impaired ability to control his trunk for mobility. His muscle tone was abnormal, with decreased flexibility and strength. MV1 had decreased endurance and activity tolerance and impaired balance with impaired motor function. He has bilateral knee contractures, a condition where the knee joints become stiff and cannot extend. Severe muscle wasting and severe subcutaneous fat loss is noted in the clavicle and temple. During an assessment for mental health, MV1 tested positive for PTSD and depression. When I first read that, I was like, duh, obviously. Like, this is unbelievable trauma. So yeah, they better start there. PTSD and depression. During these assessments, MV1 noted that he was forced to urinate in plastic bottles that he would empty by dumping out of his window, and when he defecated, he would do so on the floor using newspaper. When asked, he could not remember the last time he showered. He's noted as being developmentally delayed, at this time having an adolescent cognitive level. When provided a task to complete, MV1 demonstrated difficulty problem solving, multitasking, and sequencing. He became frequently overwhelmed and needed verbal cues to continue. Shame, oh no, shame, oh my goodness. I really hope he has a lot of love and support around him. This is a very serious case, you know. It can't just be like recover physically and off you go. Off you go where? They really have to look after him. I mean, he's 32 years old, but as they say, from all these results, I really hope that there will be people, maybe even extended family, I don't know, who will love and care for him for the rest of his life. That during Detective Pesquet's interview on the 21st of February of 2025, he photographed MV1 in his current condition. See attached appendix. We obviously don't have that. Incorporated into the affidavit for reference. They're labeled A, B, C, and D. These photos show MV1's condition on 2/21/25, which demonstrate MV1's malnutrition, frailty, and dental health. On the 27th of Feb of 25, MV1's uncle, Kurt, responded to the Waterbury Police Department and provided a sworn statement regarding male victim 1. This Uncle Kurt said that he had not seen male victim 1 since 2004 or 2005. He remembered going to the address for Christmas Eve for a few years in a row until the family pushed him and his wife away. He remembered that male victim 1 was always skinny, meek, and mild-mannered. Kurt recalled trying to ask male victim 1 questions, but Kimberly Sullivan interfered. Kurt stated that he attempted to reach out over time, but there was no response. Concerned for male victim 1, Kurt stated that about 10 years ago, he spoke with a private investigator who suggested going to vital statistics to look for a death certificate. In regards to male victim 1's condition, Kurt stated that when he visited MV1 in the hospital after the fire, he stated, "I was shocked. He looks like a Holocaust survivor." The detectives conducted a PD in-house database check for MV1, which did not reveal any police interactions within this city since 4/1/2005 and 4/18/2005, 20 years ago. Additional law enforcement database inquiries for MV1 did not reveal any results or records for MV1. An NCIC or collect check redacted. Up to this point in the investigation, detectives have been unable to locate any recent school history past 2005. That the 2 reports on file from 4/1/05 and 4/18/05 are reports to police regarding the well-being of MV1. The reports note the DCF had been sent to check on MV1 and that staff at the school that he had been attending was contacting different agencies to check on MV1. That during the course of the investigation, 2 search and seizure warrants were applied for and granted for at the address. On the 27th of Feb of 2025, the other on the 28th of Feb of 2025. The first for the arson investigation, the second for the abuse investigation. During the execution of these warrants, photos were taken by the Waterbury Police Forensics Division. The room where the fire had started, MV1's room, measured approximately 9 feet by 8 feet with an angled ceiling. Again, it's about 6 square meters. Photographs of the door of this room and the door jamb were taken. On the door jamb, it appeared that you could see holes from previous locks that were utilized in the past. Remember the stepmother saying, "Get the screwdriver, remove the locks." Okay. You could also see the locks that were currently on it were functional and clearly meant to keep someone in, not someone out of the room. You could also see that there was plywood attached to each side of the door, not only to reinforce it, but to prevent any tampering of the outer locks. The door jamb and door were taken as evidence. That, based on the facts and circumstances contained herein, the affiant believes that probable cause has been established and respectfully requests that an arrest warrant be issued for Kimberly Sullivan. I'm going to read you the charges now. Let me just show you again who she is. This is the stepmother that was arrested. Okay. So for Kimberly Sullivan, charging her with assault in the 1st degree in violation of that code, kidnapping in the 2nd degree in the violation of that code, unlawful restraint in the 1st degree, and cruelty to persons in violation of, and reckless endangerment in the 1st degree in violation of that. Let it be noted that each charge carries the date range of 3/7/1996 through 2/17/2025. Due to the fact that MV1 states that the abuse began around the age of 3 years old up until the day that MV1 set the fire. So they are going all the way in. They are like, okay, we're going to maximize this. Let's not start at age 11 from that address. We're going back from when this victim was 3 years old. Now, let me just quickly read you about those charges that you can see on the screen there. So if they would be, because I was looking up which, how many years per sentence if convicted, okay? So assault in the 1st degree, the penalty is up to 20 years imprisonment. The mandatory minimum is 5 years. Kidnapping in the 2nd degree is also up to 20 years. Minimum is 3 years. Unlawful restraint in the 1st degree, up to 5 years imprisonment. Mandatory minimum, none specified. And that's for Connecticut, okay? And then cruelty to persons, up to 5 years imprisonment, and reckless endangerment in the 1st degree, up to 1 year imprisonment. So the total potential sentence, if sentenced to the maximum for each charge, if it was consecutively, would be 51 years. The mandatory minimums would then be 8 years, a total of 8 years non-suspendable. So between 8 and 51 years, the stepmother is now 56 years old. Concurrent sentencing. Courts often impose concurrent sentences for related offenses arising from the same incident or course of conduct. If all sentences run concurrently instead of consecutively, the maximum would be 20 years, the longest single term from assault first or kidnapping second, with a non-suspendable minimum of 5 years. So let's see what will happen, right? So again, just to recap, based on that, I'm reading it now I'm just checking my notes for all these different charges and what the max could be, because that's what I wanted to know. And I'm thinking, if I want to know it, you want to know it. So you can read the charges there. So Kimberly Sullivan, 56 years old, could face a maximum sentence of 51 years if convicted on all charges with consecutive terms, with a minimum of 8 years non-suspendable due to mandatory minimums for assault in the first degree, kidnapping in the second, and all these other charges. So that's pretty much what we need to know. Okay, so next she'll be in court, they said, on March 26th. So there's that. Okay. Someone said she's 56. She looks much older than that. That's a hard 56. Okay, so we'll take this off now. I want to show you still a couple of clips. So just hold on one second, which would be this right here. Yeah. I think this would be the community speaks out after woman accused of holding man captive for years. Let's see this. Sorry, and I'm going to have to resize it because it was sized for our document. So hold on one second. Okay. Here we go. So let's listen to this.
We knew it. We reported it. Not a damn thing was done. That's the tragedy of the whole thing.
Tom Pannone hasn't seen the alleged victim since he was in 4th grade in the early 2000s, but says he always knew something was wrong. He was the principal at the now closed Barnard Elementary School and says he and his staff noticed that the child was extremely small and thin. He says when they asked him questions, the boy told them he wasn't allowed food at times at the house.
Everyone really was concerned with this child since he was 5 years old. You knew something was wrong. It was grossly wrong.
He says teachers would even bring food in for the student. He says he and his team made multiple calls to his stepmom, Kimberly Sullivan, and called the Department of Children and Families at least 20 times. The arrest warrant says the student was told to lie and say everything was fine. But by 5th grade, he never came back to school.
You don't disappear off the face of the earth at 10 years old.
Pannone was told the student was enrolled in Wolcott schools, but he couldn't find any records of that. He was also told at one point the boy was homeschooled.
We probably saw that kid 3 times outside.
Paula DePina says she lived next door to the Sullivan home from 2003 to 2009 and says she would see Kimberly, the late husband, and 2 daughters, but not the stepson as often, and says...
Remember, the late husband, so his dad is deceased. He died in January of 2024.
When she did catch a glimpse, what she saw was deeply troubling.
I'm trembling right now just thinking about it, just because I can remember his face.
And as for neighbors now...
Never seen a stepson, never.
It's shocking, like not knowing what's going on around you.
Pannone says he feels anger hearing that his former student allegedly was pushed so hard he had to set fire to his own home to escape, and shares this message to his former student.
Sorry we couldn't do more, because you went through more than any of us ever will go through in our lives.
Thanks for watching.
Okay, so there's that clip. There's one more that I want to show you. So let's just take a look at this one over here. Okay.
There and being hurt, God knows what it's hurting me, just to see that little boy, just there and being hurt. God knows what they did to him,
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Paula DePina says she used to live next door to the home where police say the man was held captive. She says she would see him in the windows and always thought something was off.
He was always upstairs on the 2nd floor on the window, looking like a little ghost. He was pale, white. And then I'm like, I don't know why maybe he doesn't like to come out. But I never thought anything was wrong.
DePina says after hearing...
Trust your gut. That's another lesson we'd like to share you. See something, say something, trust your gut. Because she was like, I knew something was off. Couldn't quite put a finger on it, right? It's like this little ghost in the window, but never saw him coming out the house. And just felt something's a little funny. Yeah, request a welfare check, call the police. as someone said earlier, it's not snitching if you're trying to protect society, especially children, animals, vulnerable people, elderly, but people in general. You know, we need to look out for each other, because we can't assume someone else will do it. That's the problem, is that most people say, oh, someone else will call. Probably it's already been dealt with. Maybe not. Maybe 20 years will go by and literally no one, maybe everyone thought, that's a little weird, and then moved on with their day. Well, that's what happened in this case. I'm just saying, yeah, if you see something, say something. It could save a life or save someone from horrifying abuse.
About the allegations, she would have called 911 sooner. Kimberly Sullivan, the man's stepmother, was arrested Wednesday on a number of charges, including kidnapping in the second degree and cruelty to persons. Her attorney, Ioannis Kaloidis, urges people not to jump to conclusions despite the allegations.
All we have right now are allegations. And yes, sometimes allegations look bad, but that's why we have a process. And that's why we have a defense. And we intend to mount one in this case. And we intend to push back on all the allegations that have been made against her.
According to the arrest warrant for Sullivan, the man details he was held captive, starved, and abused for the past 20 years. He told police investigators he was so hungry he would sometimes eat food out of the garbage at school. The warrant also details when he was a child, he was taken out of school after 2 DCF visits. He says a lock was put on his outside bedroom door. He got little to no sleep and went hungry, quote, all day, every day, my entire life. Shay Baker, his current next-door neighbor, remembers seeing him years ago.
I was just in the backyard playing, and I looked up and saw a boy, and I waved at him. He smiled and waved back, and I hadn't seen him in the house or anywhere around since. So I just figured, like, was family visiting? Is it somebody that I made up? There was just no sign of him being there outside of that day.
Neighbors say they wish they could have done something sooner.
I've been out here, I don't know how many times, with the dogs, cutting grass. If he would have just tapped on the window and said, help me, I could have helped him.
That's easy to say. I understand what the dude is saying, but that's not how it works, you know? But, you know, I can't say anything to that. There's nothing more I could say. It's not the victim's fault at all, you know? He was so scared of what the punishment would be if he did that. Because what if it didn't work out, you know? And I mean, 20 years of fear, 20 years of living that way, 20 years of surviving, doing the chores. Even sometimes, I know someone will, if they don't understand trauma or anything, coercive control, and they want a victim blame, they'll be like, what? He had to go wash the car. Couldn't he run away? When he escaped the first time, why is he going to eat food? Why does he not run away? No, those questions are not appropriate, because that's just not how it works. It's a traumatized individual from the age of 3. So trauma his whole life. Basically, trauma is all he knew, based on what he's told the police, right? This is very, very sad. I'm going to keep you posted on this case. Of course, we've done quite the deep dive today because we had that court document. So again, thank you to Grizzly Cat for obtaining that court document for us so that I could read that all to you and we could really study this case. And there are lots of other clips. If you just say like Waterbury captive or Kimberly Sullivan in court, you'll see more clips of her and her attorney and everything. But I don't want to keep you too long and I don't want to overwhelm you because we've already been here for almost 90 minutes now. And I want to make sure that people also will click on this and watch the story so that we can continue to discuss this, because this is just absolutely terrible. And I really hope that the victim will know that we're all rooting for him, right? I really hope that he will recover, that everything will be okay, and that he will have a really great support system, because he's never had that his whole life. So I would say he's an honorary Grizzly, a total warrior, a survivor, like of the highest degree. I can't even imagine what he's been through. So he's still young, 32 years old. The rest of his life is still ahead of him. I have high hopes for him. So everyone, thank you for watching with me. I really appreciate your time here with me. I know there's many things you could choose to watch, and I always love it when you're here with me to study these cases. I couldn't do it without you. If you haven't yet liked the episode, please just like it, not because you like the topic at all. No one likes the topic. Just because you want others to see it or you like the way that I present true crime. Please also leave your comments below. I look forward to reading them, and share to whether it's Facebook or Reddit or WhatsApp or X or wherever, Blue Sky. Please do share it as well so others can also learn about this. There's always lessons in all these cases. And thank you so much. Thank you, mods. I'll see you again very soon. Stay safe.